Wonderful. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Meet Your Farmer webinar. Today, we are focused on small grains. My name is Amy Mateus. I'm the Program Director for the Sun Valley Institute for Resilience. I'm joined today by my colleague, Mike Gordon, who will help me out with all the tech stuff. We are recording this session, so please stay muted during the presentation. We will have a Q&A session towards the end where you're welcome to turn your cameras on and unmute to ask questions. You're also welcome to ask any questions in the chat during the presentation. So today our webinar will include, not going to the next slide yet, there we go. We'll include introductions to our farmers on the panel, an overview of what small grains are, the benefits and considerations of growing and consuming small grains, cooking methods and recipe ideas, and then where to source locally grown grains here in the Wood River Valley. We plan for about 20 minutes at the end for questions for our panelists. And without further ado, I'd like to pass the mic over to our farmers to introduce themselves, share a bit about their business models and growing practices and the products they offer. We're going to start with Thousand Springs Mill. I stayed kind of in alphabetical order just to keep it simple. I see Tim here. I'm not sure if Paige is with us yet. So I'll pass it over to Tim to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Thousand Springs.
Yes, thank you. I'm Tim Corney with Thousand Springs Mill. I know Brett and Wilder, good operators. So I'm an organic farmer, and we're big on soil biology and cover crop farming. That's our practices. And we like to grow healthy food. We grow beans. We got some ancient grains. We got some corn, Abenaki corn. It goes back a couple thousand years, and some Hopi blue corn. That is got a lot of history and a lot of flavor. Tibetan grain barleys and some Tibetan black barley. So we're kind of we're also working with it's called Barley Max, and it's super low gluten, but they won't give it its gluten-free status, but it's really very minute. So anyway, there's a lot of interesting old grains. The other thing I wanted to bring up, when you deal with these ancient grains like corn, and I don't know if that's part of your small grains thing or not, but it's amazing to see how much bee activity we have when we go to the heirloom ancient grains or the corn. I never have seen bees in corn before, but when it's tasseling, you see a lot of activity. And so pretty excited about what that's going to do. And if you need recipes, you can go to our website, Thousand Springs Mill, 1000 Springs Mill. And we got a really amazing chef who got a national award just the other day. And so for her cooking. So anyway, very proud of Amber Snow, and might want to look for her on the YouTube videos.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that overview, and really cool to hear about those bees in the corn. I haven't seen bees in corn myself, so that's awesome.
Yes.
Let's jump over now to Wilder Jones from King's Crown Organic.
Hi, everyone. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Wilder Jones. I work with my father, Nate Jones, with his farm, King's Crown Organics Farm. It's in Glenns Ferry, Idaho, along the Snake River. That's halfway between Boise and Twin Falls. My father certified organic in the early 90s. He's one of the original 11 growers to get certified by the Idaho State Department of Agriculture. And since that certification, he's grown his farm from 120 acres to nearly 700. And we're very diversified for Southern Idaho, especially given the farming culture. And you can find us at the Ketchum Farmers Market, the Boise Farmers Market, some local retail markets like Atkinson's, Boise Co-op. We sell to a couple restaurants, the Covey, CK's, Raspberries, in the Wood River Valley. And our farming operation is predominantly focused on or centered around row crops that require irrigation. And it's a little unique that I would be featured on this panel. It's only because of some experimentation that we're doing that we've kind of entered back into this realm of small grains. We grow some organic corn for organic dairies down the road. alfalfa, dry beans, if you've ever consumed any of Amy's Kitchen or Eden beans. Those are some of ours in their cans here and there. And we do a big vegetable garden with all the hot, as we describe them, hot climate produce that you could find: melons, peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes. So we have a big gamut. And I don't know that, I think, would you like me to just speak now about the grain trial, Amy?
Yeah, if you just want to share a little bit, that'll connect the dots of why you are here today. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, so Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance is doing some incredible work on bolstering the seed supply of heritage grains and unique small grain varieties. And they reached out to me because of our organic certification. They needed seed stock grown through a grant that they were approved for, and it's a two-part trial. There's winter wheat varieties and spring wheat varieties, and there are all sorts of groovy names from all around the world. Purple Turkish barley, Iraq durum, really far out varieties. I don't even know what they look like in their maturity yet, because we just planted the spring varieties and the winter varieties are still just inching along. And so I'm really excited about it, though, because small grains offer a valuable part to a crop rotation that, if it became feasible, we would love to incorporate. And I can speak more about that in the Q&A as to why we want small grains.
Great. Thanks, Wilder. And thanks for being here. And last, but certainly not least, let's hear from Brett Stevenson of Hillside Grain, the operator of our very own flour mill located right in the heart of the Bellevue Triangle.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for putting this together. So let's see, my dad started farming here in the Valley about 47 years ago. And unfortunately, due to our short growing season, a little cooler temps, as opposed to Glenn's Ferry and Wilder's operation, we're a little more limited. And so we're a little more focused, and it has primarily been small grains, mostly barley and some wheat in those 45 years, rotated with some legumes. And my motivation was basically vertical integration, to build upon what my dad did. And so I added the mill, and it's really my family that's doing the farming collectively, my brother and my dad. But I just found this like odd need for grains in our community. I was asked repeatedly by some in the brewing, craft brewing industry in Southern Idaho for our barley. And it's like, I would love to sell you our barley, but it needs to be malted first. And so there just seemed to be this gap, this processing gap between producers and growers and the actual end consumers. And so in attempt to fill that void, I first looked at malting, and got a little nervous in the 11th hour because there were a lot of unknowns and a lot of risks, and it seemed like flour and milling was a lot more approachable, and it actually suited my personality better. I love wheat and dough products, and I eat a lot more of those than I probably drink beer, so it all worked out better. And in doing that too, I felt like I was able to connect the growers, processors, consumers in this identity preservation that's, I think people are hungry for, to be able to see and know their farmers and where their food's coming from. A lot of the Southern Idaho ag is shipped out of state and kind of processed at a large scale. And that's not to say, that's a lot of what we're doing too. We are still growing quite a bit for the malting industry, for the brewing industry, primarily organic, also some conventional, but primarily organic. So yeah, that's kind of the nitty gritty. My mill, I don't know if I should get into that now or later, just to kind of explain a little bit about the flour and how we're processing grain. Amy, do you want me to talk about that a little bit now?
I think, yeah, take a couple minutes and share about the mill would be great.
Okay. So the mill is super unique. It's kind of one of a kind. There's one somewhat similar in Washington called Cairn Springs. And I think we're the only two in the country that are basically like this European style mill where we're using a roller mill and a stone mill in combination. So the roller mill is just cracking it and not primarily used for flour, whereas the stone is really where we're getting the flour. And so what we end up with, our product is referred to as high extraction flour, which basically means that it retains a lot of bran and germ. So it's far from white, but it's also not whole wheat. And in Europe, I think their flours are often in this spectrum. And in the US, we're pretty much primarily white and then a little tiny bit of whole wheat. But it's really fascinating to me because there's this whole in between of brown to white. And why that's valuable is with this high extraction, we basically can get a product that performs a little bit more like white flour, where you get a little bit more loft, it's a little bit more forgiving, but it has the flavor and nutritional density more similar to a whole wheat flour. So it's pretty exciting, it's pretty unique, and it tastes, I think, fantastic.
I agree. Fantastic tasting. Thank you, Brett, for that. Now that we've been introduced to our farmers, I'm going to take a few minutes and introduce you all to small grains. Many of you probably eat small grains on a daily basis. You find it in your loaves of bread, your oatmeal, your favorite adult beverages like beer and liquor, and as a hearty side dish to a lot of different types of meals. Small grains that we grow here in Idaho include wheat, barley, rye, oats, teff, and quinoa. While some of those grains are commodity crops like wheat and barley, farmers are experimenting with heirloom varieties, ancient grains, and grains that haven't been traditionally grown in this region, including teff and quinoa. Small grains are often found as flour products, but over the last few years or handful of years, we've really seen whole grains find their place on our plates. They are great sources of fiber, plant-based vitamins and minerals, and protein. And while rice is one of the most popular grains across the globe, it isn't commonly grown here in Idaho. So if you are looking at supporting local farmers and eating a locally based diet, barley and wheat are really delicious year-round options available for your plate. There are a number of benefits that small grains offer to both farmers and to us, the eaters or consumers. Our farmers kind of highlighted some of those, but I will go over them again. So for farmers, it really can incorporate a diversity of crops. You heard Wilder speak to that. They have a diverse operation and they're adding small grains because it has the opportunity to boost soil health. You can access emerging markets. The heirloom grain market is definitely an emerging market. So are some of those craft brew markets that Brett mentioned. The benefits to consumers is incorporating this year-round locally grown product into your diet means that you can source this from our local farmers throughout the year, which is great compared to our short growing season for some crops. They also are like fresher and tastier when you get them locally, especially things like flour. I can vouch as I use Hillside Grain flour in all my breads and baked goods. I've never like noticed flour had a taste before, right? Like it's just a part of your loaf of bread or your cupcake, right? But when you start to use these local products, you start to actually taste the flavor of the region or the terroir. So I really appreciate that. And obviously, when we source local products, we reduce our carbon footprint and ensure the future of our regional farmers. Some considerations to make when sourcing small grains can include that, like, it's fresher and tastier. It also means that locally milled flour might have a shorter shelf life compared to the highly processed white flour found in many kitchens. Wheat and barley contain gluten. I'm excited to hear that Tim is working on a low gluten barley. I think that's really cool because, as we know, gluten intolerances have become pretty commonplace in the last 20 or so years. And we can get into that conversation a little bit more towards the end, but do think about that. If you're swapping out rice with barley or wheat, you might have some people that won't want to consume it because of the gluten in there. However, there are some of those heritage grains that are less gluten-y and some cooking preparation techniques that can help reduce some of the issues related to the gluten intolerances as well. Some varieties, like especially those heritage grains, as Wilder spoke to, are really lacking a robust seed stock, which means it's more costly to grow because the seeds are harder to find. We're really lucky that farmers like Wilder and Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance are working to address that problem. There are other barriers that they face, though, because when we start to go outside of the box of the conventional commodity crops, we start to think about different tools and techniques used to harvest those and to process those, and they are not necessarily the norm or popular. So that can be a barrier when accessing those markets. And obviously, any type of emerging market can be risky for farmers. And when farmers are already facing slim margins, they really need support and incentives to experiment with some of these new and emerging crops. Last but not least, cooking grains can be a bit intimidating if you're used to like microwaving quick rice or using plain white flour in all your recipes. So we're really lucky that our farmers know that that can be a barrier and do a really great job of educating consumers. So Tim mentioned that Thousand Springs Mill has a lot of recipes on their website, which is a great way to do it. But I wanted to just go over some really easy ways to incorporate these small grains into your diet on a daily basis. Wheat and barley berries are cooked in liquid, just like rice. You can shorten that cook time by soaking them ahead of time, which is what I do. I also really like to cook them in bulk and make a big batch of them and then keep them in the fridge or freezer for easy incorporation into my meals throughout the week. So it's great to think about adding in some barley or wheat berries into a soup. Thinking about grain bowls. I know I love to have a grain bowl with a wheat berry base and then add some roasted veggies, some smoked salmon, or a yummy cut of like Idaho beef or lamb on there. And if you really are a rice fan, just try swapping out barley or wheat berries for the rice in your favorite recipe and see what you think of it. And as always, like definitely ask your farmers for great ways to incorporate their products into your meal. So now that we have gone over what small grains are and how they can be incorporated into your diet, let's talk about where we can source these locally grains. So I'll start with Thousand Springs Mill. They are available through Atkinson's Market, Craze Market and Garden, and you can order their products through their website. They have both certified organic and non-GMO product lines. And like Tim mentioned, not only do they have small grains, they also have beans, popping corn, and a handful of other products. So look there for an assortment. And I think the whole product line is available at Atkinson's. So that's really nice to have. We went over those products already. You can see they're really nice packaging there. It's bright and pops out on the shelf. So be on the lookout the next time you're grocery shopping. King's Crown Organic is a little bit different. As Wilder shared, they are not actively selling their grain products, but you can find a lot of their delicious certified organic produce and grass-fed beef at the Wood River Farmers Market that starts in June. And we hope that we see some grains on the market from them in the coming seasons. And then Hillside Grain, those flours are available at Atkinson's Market, Craze Market and Garden, and now Brett has an online store where she will ship around the country. Even if you live up in Ketchum, she'll ship to you, no problem. A lot of restaurants in our community are using her flour products, which is really exciting. And if you don't know if your favorite baker or chef is using locally grain products, we always say ask. Consumers have a lot of pull when it comes to sourcing local. So if you don't know if your favorite bread is made with local flour, ask them, because that's the best way to introduce them to our local products. So Hillside offers bread flour, pastry flour, whole wheat, and all-purpose white flour in retail and bulk bags. And I will also ask Brett, do you have wheat berries and barley berries available, Brett?
I have wheat berries, not really barley berries right now, but sometimes usually we do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So as you can see, you can find these products like at Atkinson's, at Craze Market and Garden, or simply order them on their website to be delivered to your door. So it's really accessible products, and we hope that you will try out some locally grown grains in your next meal. So now that we've learned all about small grains and our local farmers who grow them, I think we are ready to jump into the Q&A. So I will stop sharing my screen. And let's see. So I don't have any questions in the chat yet. I know we just went over a bunch of information. So we'll give people a moment or two to think about their questions. If you have questions, you're welcome to, yeah, go ahead, Brett.
I have a comment just to follow up on something that you mentioned earlier. You know, it's about fiber and our lack of fiber in our diet. It's so interesting to me, and why these whole grains are so valuable. I actually had wheat berries for breakfast, and I love wheat berries. But I'm participating in University of Colorado at Colorado Springs Grain School right now. We just had some dietitians speaking to us recently, and they talked about our fiber intake in the country is so low, lower than the recommended value, and our recommended value is lower than other developed countries' recommended value. So in other words, our fiber intake is excessively low, and one great way to get more fiber is these whole grains or whole wheat or close to whole wheat. So it really is a good thing to add to your diet if you're not already eating it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I knew it was low. I didn't know it was that low. Like, I didn't know our recommended value is lower than other countries, and we
isn't
don't
that
even need
interesting?
that.
Totally.
Oh, it's nerve-wracking. I
Totally.
mean, I think about how many digestive issues we have too, right? And fiber's great for the gut.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Another really interesting comment that they made in one of those discussions was that, and some of this we've seen, I guess I didn't realize to quite the extent. Another thing that we're often deficient in is zinc, and zinc comes from the soil. So it's so all encompassing. You get so many nutrients and vitamins out of the soil into the plant. Like that's where the protein level comes from in the wheat. I think often people don't realize that, like, our protein levels, they are what they are off the field, like, because it's coming from the nitrogen in the soil. So I don't know, it's pretty neat to think about it like that.
yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so we do have 2 questions in the chat. I'm going to expand one of the questions because it was about Hillside, but I want to know from each farmer, and we'll start with Hillside. Do you offer tours? Can people come down and check out what you're doing? Brett, take it on first, and then we'll jump to someone else.
Boy, I have not had very many visitors in the past year because of the pandemic. Before that, no, not formally, but yeah, when people ask, I would often show them. I try to, early on, I was getting so many requests. I was kind of trying to pre-pandemic coordinate and put people together, because otherwise I felt like I was going to be a tour guide rather than a miller. But yeah, I'm happy to show people the setup. It's pretty elaborate. It looks like a massive Rube Goldberg machine with augers and motors everywhere, and the product moves throughout the whole thing, kind of from start to finish, all via this control panel. And it's squished into a little tiny building. It's not that small, but yeah, I'm happy to show people the mill.
Yeah, I'll just share, when I first went to go look at Hillside, the mill, in my mind, I was like, oh, it's a stone mill. There's going to be, mechanical hand pushed stone grinding everything. And it is a very tech savvy, innovative setup that has a lot of gadgets and buttons that you don't want to press, and vacuums and things moving all over. And it's really cool to see, and to think like that is small scale, because the large scale is that times 100, right? So it's really interesting to start to see how small scale doesn't necessarily mean like hand done everything, and that tools mechanization is really important to make it profitable for people. So,
it's this neat blend of old world and new world with the stone mill and all the tech side of it. Yeah, the stone mill is about 5 feet across, and
it's very cool.
Each,
yeah. And Tim, what about you? Can people come and tour Thousand Springs? What does that look like?
Well, yeah. So we, as everybody knows, we bought the Pillsbury plant in Buell when it went down, and then so that way, our footprint's very low, because we can go 5 miles from the farm, bring it in, clean it, and then go into packaging and then deliver straight to the DCs, where people like Bob's Red Mill, they're handling it 4 or 5 times and truck 5 times before it gets to where it needs to be. Because of SQF and regulations and food safety, we try to be careful, and so we try not to do very many if we have to, you know what I mean, because of that. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of compliance, because we're kind of the next level up, and so. But what's important is also let you know we have our e-commerce site as well. So if anybody wants product delivered to their door, they can not only get the recipes, but they just hit the button and it ships to their door as well. Also, I wanted to add that we are putting Matthew Gusteau's up there in Boise makes an amazing bread. And so he uses a Unifine. And so we're really close friends. He got me hooked onto a Unifine, and that's a European from France. And it's a different style of milling. And we're going to be making a buckwheat pancake mix. And so we're going to be running it through and then making it close to eat, and working with some polenta as well with this machine. And then also I'm planting quinoa tomorrow, and we're working with a company out of Norway, and they have a red quinoa, and we're wanting to put that into a meal replacement bar along with some other products. And this Barley Max is really helped a lot of our people that work for us. Actually, Amber was taking the Barley Max, and it's a roll for a cereal, and she puts it, and it's actually lowered her cholesterol.
Wow.
And so anyway, she's seeing benefits of it. I'm excited about the quinoa. I think and I'm also excited about hemp bill passing in Idaho. That's going to be a really healthy, beneficial crop. And, the nutrient value in that is higher than soybeans. And soybeans, is, for men, it's not that great. It gives them breast, and no one wants to play with them or look at them. So it's better to go to the hemp route. And so anyway, I'm really excited about the future of hemp in Idaho. And it's about time that this bill is going to pass.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. I mean, I love buckwheat. It's one of the things I grow for seed stock here. It's technically a pseudo grain, right? Because it's not grass, it's a forb. And it's a beautiful cover crop. It's pollinator friendly, and it's delicious. It's one of my favorite alternative grains to use for things. So I'm excited to hear about that with Thousand Springs.
We're also just for a second, we're also using that buckwheat as a cover crop for the bees, and planting sunflowers around the edges of fields for bees. And then when that crop's growing, because we're going to plant it behind winter wheat, and then that will be another thing for the bees as well.
Very cool. Wilder, what about you? Can people come and tour the grain trials that you're working on?
Oh yeah, totally. No, we don't offer any formal tours. I think there's been some in the past. I can remember when I was a kid, trailing along behind the trailer of people looking at green fields. And so, I would always encourage someone to come in the summer, not in the winter. It's more to look at. And I don't know, I guess all I could say is if you do come to take a look, throw out all your preconceived notions of what a farm should look like, and just enjoy us for what we got and how we are. But yeah, like I said, the grain trial itself is not much to look at, especially right now, but maybe come July, it could look really unique. And yeah, get a hold of us, Instagram or on our phones, and we would definitely do a private tour. No one's knocking down our doors right now, so be easy to accommodate.
Awesome. Thanks for your willingness for that. And I'm thinking maybe, because I know, one of the things about tours is it takes up farmers' time, right? And we also heard with some of the processing that there's some safety concerns, food safety, really, like bringing in things into the mill that could be problematic. And maybe there's a chance for Sun Valley Institute for Resilience to plan some tours where we bring a group of people all at one time. So your time is lessened to one group, and we can follow safety protocols and mask up and all that with a group of people. So
I like that idea, Amy. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it could be really fun. And I obviously selfishly want to go check everything out as many times as I can. So that would be a great opportunity to do that. So we'll circle back after this webinar and maybe chat a little bit more about that and what time of year would be best. We do have some other questions coming in. Wheat berries. Crystal says they're unfamiliar with wheat berries, or many people are unfamiliar with wheat berries. Could we elaborate about the plant and recipes? Do you want to take that, Brett? You want me to?
Yeah, the plant, the actual wheat plant, is that what you mean, Crystal?
Yeah, I think like people don't necessarily associate wheat berries with the same plant that maybe makes flour.
Okay.
If you want to just talk about that.
I just want to make sure I understood the question. I've had this question at the mill, which I kind of love. It's fascinating to me because, I grew up with it all around me. So and I have to realize that most people did not. It's really cool because the actual seed is the wheat berry. It's what we use to plant to grow more wheat, and it's also what we use to grind to mill for flour. So it's the same little thing. And what also I find so cool is that one little seed can make a ton others. You get these tillers, you get basically the stalks coming up, and each stalk has its own head with many seeds depending on what the variety is. So it's really pretty prolific, and it's kind of profound to watch this really simplistic, beautiful circle of life in a wheat berry or wheat seed, and how you want to end up using it, whether it's seed or wheat berries or flour.
I think that's a pretty good overview. I'll ask maybe if you want to share, like, what's your favorite way to eat wheat berries?
Well, yeah, last night I had them with cooked vegetables and it was delicious. And then I had the leftovers this morning.
So do you cook them just like
fruit.
rice then? Are you just putting them in some liquid,
Yep.
cooking them until they're soft?
Totally. They're super simple. They're so versatile. They do take a while. So like Amy suggested, sometimes soaking can speed it up. But yeah, I mean, you can use them, like she mentioned, in substitute of rice or pasta or oatmeal. So yeah, I feel like they're super versatile. Something else maybe that listeners might be interested in, I know there are other kinds, but the only one that's coming to mind right now is the little mock mill. They're these little countertop mills. And I have a couple of friends that have them, and I think it's pretty sweet if you are interested in grinding your own flour at home. And you can go right from your flour to your cookies like instantly, which is pretty cool. I mean, or you can go get our flour, which is pretty darn fresh too. But if you want to do it at home, like, or grow your own wheat berries, if you are interested in growing these like backyard garden style, or just a small little plot where you don't necessarily need a combine and a drill and all the large equipment that comes with that, you can do it at a hand scale and actually still grind yours in your own kitchen. My other favorite thing these days is making pasta. It's not wheat berries, but it's using the flour. And like Amy suggested earlier, it's remarkable. We don't put anything on top, and the flavor is incredible. I think all other pasta pretty much to date, I felt like, is fine, but you end up adding all sorts of stuff, and that's where your flavor comes from. And it's like this epiphany when you realize, well, flour and wheat can have so much flavor, and these noodles alone, you put a little olive oil and salt, it's like that's all they need, and it's really fun. It's delicious and very fast, shockingly quick and easy.
Yeah, instead of pasta being the base to add flavors to, your pasta becomes the highlight of the dish. And I think that's how it's traditionally been in more European countries, right? And in America, we load flavor on because the food doesn't have a ton of flavor itself. And I think these practices are bringing that flavor back, and we're going to be reintroduced to this palette of deliciously flavored wheat products.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're kind of conditioned to think of flour as sort of a tasteless vessel on which you put your other stuff, but it's got plenty of its own flavor inherent in the wheat and the flour.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Hopefully that answered your question, Crystal. And I will plug Thousand Springs Mill again here. Go to their website. They have tons of awesome recipes, like Tim shared, a world-renowned chef that's creating those. So that's a really great way to test a couple things. And then once you get comfortable with the cooking method, you could literally swap wheat berries or barley berries for any rice dish that you have. And try it unique, like as oatmeal or in a smoothie or something cool. There's ways that we can experiment and really step out of our norm of thinking with it just being a side dish, right? Like a rice pilaf or a barley side dish with lamb. We can think outside of that box. Our next question is, who offers, or are any of these products available in the Treasure Valley, which is Boise area, for those who might not know what Treasure Valley is?
Yes. So we're in a Boise co-op, and then let's see, I think we're in a couple other stores up there as well. So yeah, we are up in the Treasure Valley.
Okay, so definitely Boise co-op.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Paige had to step off for a second, but there's other stores up there as well. But
okay. Maybe we can include them in a list in the follow-up email where people will get the presentation deck and your contact info, and we can include a list of.
I also wanted to add that we're growing got quick oats now. And so if you guys want your oatmeal and stuff like that, you go on the website, order it, or it'll be at in all the other stores, Atkins and also Boise Co-op as well.
Great, thanks for that. Hillside, Brett, do you have anything available in the Treasure Valley area?
Yeah, Acme Bread just started using some of our flour, and they are selling some of those products at Bitter Creek. And then I am starting to work with Hudson Bakery over there. And then Boise Co-op has had our flour. It's been a little bumpy, but hopefully I'm not sure if they still have some right now in stock or not. And what else over there? I feel like I'm missing one. That's kind of Acme's the main one right now for as far as using our flour.
Okay, great. And if you want her fresh flour, you could order it online and get it shipped to your home in Boise if the Boise Co-op is out right now, which it might be because your flour is popular and it flies off the shelves. And Wilder, you mentioned you're part of the Boise Farmers Market. Are your products available anywhere else in Boise?
Our vegetables and other row crops are available in retail locations like the Boise Co-op and Larkin Larder and a couple of restaurants if you'd like to have the preparation done for you. As far as grains though, I have a vision. I don't know that it'll come true this year, but I'd like to do a countertop mill at the farmers market. Although with the Boise location, I think it's still remote. So in the advent that it goes public, I would like to offer some ground flour into September, August.
Great. That I'm excited to see that. That would be a really fun demonstration for people. And also can't get any fresher than that milled on site, right? And Brett did add that Kin in Boise is also using Hillside Grain products for their newly opened restaurant, which is awesome. Okay, so now we have a question that gets into growing practices. So the person asked, is anyone using no-till practices? I think we should maybe hear from everyone on this. And I also invite you to elaborate outside of no-till and talk about other things that you're using that are maybe a little bit different or innovative in your production model. I think this time around, let's start with Tim, because I see he popped up.
Yeah, I'm a big no-tiller. We got a 30-foot John Deere no-till drill, and we're big on our cover crop. Like Brett brought in earlier, when you are putting a root in the ground, and you're growing that, and when that plant grows, it's pulling that phosphate, nitrogen, and potash into that plant. And when you sacrifice that plant for your other crops, so like if we go in there and we plant a tillage radish, they're called like nitrogen pumps, and they blow a hole in the ground. And then it also activates a lot of worm activity. So if you've got healthy worms, you've got healthy soil. And then it aerates that as well. And then with our peas, I want to try some kale this year. And then when we get done no-tilling and we get that stuff up knee high, then we bring in a couple bands of sheep, and them sheep go in there and intensive graze. And so we're mimicking what the buffalo did back in the day, And so basically we try to mimic Mother Nature the best we can. And so no-tilling is a very important tool.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Brett, you want to speak to no-tilling and other methods that you're using for soil health?
Yeah, sure. we do some tilling, and it depends on what we're growing and what the cycle is. We also have done no-till, and we've also done no-till drill, and then a little bit of plowing. Or a little bit of tillage. And I like that he asked the question with practices, because that brings up a really good point. I feel like farming to me is like a practice, not unlike medicine or law, where you are practicing and learning every single year. And it's always evolving. There's so much changing. And I feel so strongly about no or minimal till and soil health. On our operation, and I know we're not alone, I think this is the vast majority of organic operations, it's a struggle to do no-till and organic, to be quite honest, because that's often your weed control is some sort of minor tillage. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be moldboard plow tilling, but so you know, those are the farming struggles. Like it's not as easy, at least maybe it is for some, but it can be a struggle with weeds. Cover crops are awesome. We do a lot of that. We do a lot of compost. We have been cross drilling, which means you take your no-till drill and you go across the field one way and then you go across the field the other way. That increases your seed volume by a lot, but it also sort of drowns out weeds. I have tried some intercropping with mixed luck. I want to try more of that. And that basically means that you plant what I did was a variety of clover that doesn't grow very tall in with my wheat. So that would help put nitrogen in the soil, kind of diversify everything. And the microbial activity is a little bit mixed up, a little different. But it also is trying to squish out weeds. And then the wheat grows higher than the clover, so we can go in and harvest the wheat without much interference with the clover. So there's so many different practices and things that you can continue to tinker with, but it's an evolution, and that's what's cool. It's exciting, it's challenging, it's frustrating, it's rewarding. All of the above.
You got to have a little flexibility and adaptability to be
a practice,
innovative farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And willingness to test things and not succeed at them and to keep trying. Right.
Yeah. And those failures. Oh, sorry. Just one more thing.
Go ahead.
Failures, it's really hard because, like my dad likes to say, you have one shot a year. In his 47 years, he's had 47 tries in his whole career. You know what I mean? So you get a plant, and that's you have your one growing season. It's not like you go to work and it's a new day every day. Like, I mean, it is a new day every day, but it's one growing season. That's all
right. You can't just plant whenever you feel like it. There's a system and a calendar that you follow based on the temperatures, the weather patterns, the length that the plant needs to mature. So you can't just plant an extra crop in September and think you're going to harvest.
Totally.
Right?
And then your market demands, like you have to know what you're going to need or how you're going to sell it in April when you plant, and you're not going to get it till August. Like, well, that all needs to be kind of accounted for in advance.
Yeah. So interesting. Thanks for sharing those details. Wilder, do you have anything you want to speak to about no-till practices?
Yeah, I think Brett really summarized the complexities of integrating no-till really well. On our operation, I would say that we definitely minimally till, especially as far as the spectrum goes of all farming across the world. And part of our minimal tilling, it includes, crops that are more perennial in nature and last longer than a season. So we've started to incorporate pasture back into our rotation because we find it more valuable than alfalfa, which is another perennial crop, but we're not always too high on the dairy industry, organic or conventional. And so intercropping with a perennial into our rotation has been very valuable. We don't like to see any bare ground in the winter, so we are always planting a cover crop behind our harvests. And because, and like Brett said, the holy grail of farming practices is going to be the person who's like, this is how you no-till and organic across all of the spectrum on like how to do it. They have it, things are pinned down on how to do it certain places with the certain crops that people grow. So they might have it figured out in the Dakotas with their seed oils rotating in with a small grain. Like it really might be hammered out. And Tim probably has it really well done, like given his circumstances, given his finance on his farm, how he wants to operate. And so, you're always operating within your confinement of how broad you think or what you think you do. And so our farm, we think, and we do grow onions, potatoes, dry beans, and we know how to do that well by tilling. And so, and like Brett said, tilling is our weed management protocol for being organic, because we can't turn to the spray bottle anytime we have a disruption. And so what I like to say is, like, we're adding organic matter all the time, but our profitability hinges on extracting that organic matter. And so our soils are healthy in a not in an organic matter per unit intense or high concentration, because we're constantly turning that over to the next year's crop. So we couldn't do what we do if we didn't integrate minimal tilling, cover cropping, composting, and minimal tilling, because we are constantly asking the soil to, like, will you grow this cash crop of onions, and then put it to rest. And in 5 years or 6 years, when we come back to it, can you grow this crop of potatoes? Like, it's kind of like a bank account, yet you would give us a loan, but we'd be tight on the budget. So we're always, and like she said, it's a practice. We're trying to incorporate any of the new information that comes out. It's just so hard to put a practice and slap it across all farms everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's great to give people kind of an idea of the suite of tools that are available for farmers. I think Tim probably wants to jump in. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so I want to add this. This is a little bit out there, but this technology is going to be available about 4 years. With robotics, autonomous cultivators, with electric eyes, with eyes that are going to be able to detect a nightshade, a red root, a lamb's quarter, is going to be able to scan about 12 rows and be able to pluck those weeds. So the holy grail is being able to be no-till and then organic, which is really difficult. Brett is right on the money, which he's saying. But I think in about 4 or 5 years, you're going to have an addition and be able to the other one, and then we'll be able to have a multiculture plants. Like, you can have a micro clover, leave it, fixing the nitrogen for the corn, take out the weeds, and then I see the soil getting healthier, better, with more organic matter, and being a little bit easier to farm organically with this new technologies that's coming here in about 4 years.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a really exciting development happening, in a way to kind of build the scale of this while still maintaining some of those organic integrity practices of no chemical usage, right? And soil health benefits.
Yep.
So that's really fun to see. So I invite everyone else who has questions, feel free to put more in the chat. We have answered all the questions in the chat so far.
Can I just,
yeah,
off of what Tim said about the technology, I think, since there aren't burning questions here, I'm just
go for it. Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about technology development in general and how advantageous it is to agriculture and to farming. I mean, obviously there are concerns and drawbacks, but I feel like as far as like water use goes, just some things I think might be kind of interesting to people. Like, we can map our fields and the angle to the sun. Sorry, my dog's barking. And the different soil types, so we can figure out what areas need more water. So, and there's just a lot of irrigation technologies that are making irrigation far more streamlined and targeted, and therefore using less water, which is really cool too, as far as some other technological developments. And then Wilder talked a bit about the seed trials he's doing. I've done some of that as well with Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. I think it's fascinating, the heritage varieties, and there's so much value in those heritage varieties. But I think sometimes what might get a little bit understated or sort of looked down upon for a variety of reasons are new varieties. And I think it's worth commenting that there is no genetically engineered wheat that's available in the commercial market. There is genetically engineered in labs, but as far as it goes today, it's not in our food supply. And I think there is sort of a neat middle ground is hybridization, and what places like the Bread Lab or University of Idaho, the Lands Institute in Kansas, they are working, not the University of Idaho, the other two, the Bread Lab and the Lands Institute, are working on perennial varieties of wheat. And I think this is I'm sort of obsessed with perennial wheat. Kind of like what Wilder is saying, we don't like to leave soil bare, and having perennials in there instead of annuals is really valuable as far as minimizing or eliminating soil erosion, combating weed competition. So it's, oh, and the root systems are like 10 to 15 feet deep. So in theory, they're going to reach water on their own and won't need irrigation. Where the drawbacks are, at least so far in their development, is the actual seed or wheat berry kernel is pretty darn small. And so your yield is really small. So they're still continuing to work all through natural hybridization, taking traits from heritage varieties. And that's why it's so important to have these stocks available and accessible to these wheat breeders and geneticists, and trying to perfect. Kernza is the most popular one. Blue Salish is another of these wheat varieties that are perennial. But anyway, it's just sort of an interesting to think about, like the different technologies that are out there versus like the old, the ancient varieties, and how we can really utilize everything in hopes of improving the way we feed people, the way we farm, and our ecosystems.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of tools in our toolkit, and we need people who can connect them and think about it on a systems level, I think is really key. You can't just do one technology or one advancement, because outside of it working within the system, it's not going to be as successful, which is really interesting. This is like such a great conversation, and we're getting close to the hour. So I just want to share my screen one more time quickly so you all can see their contact info and websites. They're all on social media, so you're welcome to follow our farmers on social media to hear about cool stuff happening, see pictures, etc. Like I said, this will be shared with everyone after the presentation today. So if you don't capture this information, you'll get it in your email. We are asking people if they could please take a survey. Let us know how we did. Let us know if you are inspired to try grains. You can scan this QR code with your phone, or the survey link will be dropped in the chat. If you are here today, you are also registered for our future events on April 28th, May 26th, and June 30th. So please, we hope you join us for those and spread the word. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to ask my farmers one last question of how can the audience support you as farmers? Let's start with Brett, because she's unmuted.
Amy, I was just thinking about your comment earlier about ask your bakery where they're getting their flour, that applies to anything. Like just ask your restaurant, ask where your beef is coming from, ask things like that, because I think bringing that up definitely shows that consumers are interested, they care, they're aware. And we see kind of over and over again that I don't know, there are different businesses, you see them sort of claiming different things, and there's nobody to hold small businesses necessarily accountable for their labels. And so if customers continue to ask, then I think there will be some more transparency. And I do think transparency is super valuable, but also showing that what customers are interested in and what you're willing to pay maybe more for, or just where your values are, I think is really important to communicate.
Awesome. Okay. So step one to support your farmers, ask at where you eat and where you shop about their sources, and make sure they're supporting our local farmers. Tim, how can our audience support you?
Well, just going into stores like Albertsons and say, and then I forgot to say that we are in Albertsons and the Broadway and on Eagle, and also we're in Whole Foods. So I'm sorry I forgot that.
That's okay, thanks.
But the other thing is, and Brett's absolutely right. Talk to your local stores. If our products aren't in there, ask why. And because you got to move a lot of units. And all the support we can. Social media. Going on to Thousand Springs Mail and sharing our website, and telling a friend. And so I think that's a powerful way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. So aside from asking at your favorite grocery store or restaurant, support on social media, share with your friends, help spread the word. So these farmers and their brands are recognized. When you see them on the store, your incentive to buy them because you heard about them from your friend or your family on a social media post. I think that's a great idea. Wilder, how can our audience support you?
Yeah, other than the avenues that Tim and Brett mentioned, voting with your dollars is very powerful, and it's often preached by the local foodies and growers. I guess what I would want to plug, which is more of a systems approach, is everyone is a part of their food system, directly and indirectly, what you eat, but your job and what you do. If you're at all a part of, an NGO or any legislators participating in a way that addresses some of our natural resource demands, is really powerful. Obviously the reason that we're in business is because people buy our product, but there are a tremendous amount of things outside of our control that we would like to see fixed or changed or addressed. And like just Tim said, we'd like to see hemp, and that's a political thing. That has nothing to do with whether or not you want to eat it or the local food network wants it. It just is one of those things. It's a hurdle, and water is another hurdle, and property taxes is another hurdle in the Wood River Valley. It's like, or every valley. And so I think there's a lot of ways to become involved that will lessen the burden so that we can try new practices or experiment with low yielding grains. If we can at any way get out of the ways of farmers, or rather promote positive practices of farmers through our political landscape.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that takes it, at Local Food Alliance, we like to say, if you eat, you're in, because we have an opportunity to support with our dollar, but it also means that you're a stakeholder in the broader system, and food touches everything everywhere. It's one of the biggest users of our natural resources, from water, air quality, soil health, right? Mind things that are applied as fertilizers, chemical use, etc. So farming has a huge opportunity to change the conversation and make farming about stewarding our landscape. And I think, we can all take a little accountability for that and think, how do we address this in our daily lives? How can we incorporate what we learned here today into the way that we show up in our workplace or into the way we show up at our grocery store? I think that's really fundamental. So I appreciate you taking that angle, Wilder. We did get one more question here in the chat. Who is a leading organization pushing policy change at the state level in an org we can join or follow?
I can answer that one.
Great.
Yeah, so Farm Bureau's doing a beautiful job. Braden with Farm Bureau, he lobbied really hard for the hemp bill, and it's going to pass. They did a little break at the Capitol. It passed the House committee. I testified in front of the House committee, and then also the Senate, and it went to the floor to vote for the Senate, and then they had a little COVID case, and then they delayed till I think April 9th, and then it's going to come on to vote. And the bill's going to pass. I really feel good about it. They're educated now, and we're bringing it in hemp and it's sold in all the stores in Canada, and the local states are going to have a competitive edge against us. Another thing that's exciting is a guy out of Sun Valley is building a fiber insulation plant in Gooding, and they're going to take the hemp fiber and make insulation for walls for building material. And there's a lot of benefits of hemp, as you know, and so I'm really excited for this to happen.
Great, thank you. Brett or Wilder, do you want to plug any organizations? I have a couple I can mention if people want me to.
Is FAIR another one? I think they're relatively new, but is FAIR?
I was going to mention FAIR. FAIR Idaho is they advocate for independence, right? So independent people within the food sector, so restaurants, bars, beverage producers, farmers and ranchers, food processors. It's a collaboration with a number of people throughout the state of Idaho that really got together through COVID to help support restaurants, but they see an opportunity to build the connections in between all the supply chain actors. And they're also an advocacy group, so people can join as a member, and then FAIR advocates on their behalf. So they work closely with our representatives. They work with national organizations to really push to be the voice of Idaho independence at different scales of legislation, which is really key. And the other nonprofit I would plug here is the Idaho Organization of Resource Councils. They are a part of a larger nationwide organization, but they work on issues related to natural resources. So water pollution, mining, soil, and there's great work that they do for food and farming throughout the state. So I would look to them for some guidance. There's a lot of things people can get involved in policy, from farm bill advocacy to what's happening locally with planning and zoning and what prohibits people from building flour mills or from starting a dairy or from growing food in their backyard, right? So there's a lot of policy that comes into play when it's connected with the food system. No one person can know it all or do it all. So really find the area that you're interested in and see what type of support is out there and who you can connect with. I know we're now a couple minutes over, but Wilder added to the chat that his book recommendation is Irrigated Eden, which I have not heard of, but it sounds really cool for a naturalist perspective of agriculture in Southern Idaho. That sounds like a great read, and I think will probably be added to all of our lists after this conversation. So do you all have anything else you want to add? Like anything you want to share as people are starting to sign off, but I can be on for a couple more minutes.
I just want to say one little thing. I don't think can you still see me?
Yeah.
If you know somebody that's a small farmer, if there's ever a time for them to transition to organic, it's now. Because now that we have Brett, to support her, we're gonna need farmers that give them supply. We need farmers to transition so we have a source, because we want to support the young farmer and make him sustainable, because I worry about hedge funds buying most of the farm ground coming down the pike. What's going on now is that we've got school trust funds, pension funds, hedge funds are buying farmland, and we don't want to lose our sovereignty of agriculture with a small farm. And so anyway, if they're willing to transition organic, call the mill number 1,000 Springs, and then find me and I'll talk to them, and then try to talk them through the process.
Awesome. Thank you for that plug. I think it's really important to give an avenue for farmers who are transitioning, an opportunity to tap into these markets, get support, and share knowledge, right? Our farmers that work in this space that are doing regenerative practices, organic practices, sharing information with each other is huge. And
if we can help them from making a mistake, that's the thing, is that learning curve is expensive. And if we say, we tried that and it didn't work, but try it this way. And, we got to help our fellow man. And so, like I said, be glad to help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim, for that. Brett, any last words of wisdom you want to share with us?
No, I mean, the only thing I can't help but to touch on, because we didn't get to it, that is just one of my biggest things these days, is if you or anyone has some gluten sensitivities, in all the research and reading I've done, I've found that if you're eating clean grain and a fermented bread the way it should be made, I've had a lot of feedback that it is far more digestible. And so the digestibility and gluten sensitivities, I think, are such a fascinating topic, and we didn't really delve into that. But I just, in general, think that there are a lot of things that are going on in the field, in the flour mill, and in the baking process that we're having a hard time digesting, not necessarily the gluten, because we've been eating gluten for thousands of years. So that's one real quick snippet on a massive topic, but I just wanted to throw that in there because we didn't actually talk about that. And I think it's really fascinating, kind of pretty important.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm really glad Brett brought that up, because when I was over in Europe, I was over there in France and Germany and over there for in 2014. And everybody eats fresh bread, and they go to their local bakery and they eat, bread, and no one's got gluten issues that I could tell over there. And you're like going, okay, so why do Europe have no issues, but over here we have so many problems? And I think I've came down to the conclusion that we got too many preservatives. When you eat Brett's bread, she's grinding that, got the endosperm, the bran, and all the nutrients are in that deal. And so when that goes into your food and then goes in your gut, you're going to digest that and handle that so much better. And so it's the mill process, keeping that brand in endosperm and keeping that all as one unit. All this flour is being extracted. They take the germ out, they take the bran out, and that's where all your nutrients is. And it just wasn't designed to be that way. When they were in Rome and marching and doing their war and whatever, they ate whole grains.
Totally.
Yep. I'm with you both on that. I like to say I'm gluten full, not gluten free. We love our gluten in this house. Local gluten, right? Gluten that's prepared correctly and cooked well and eaten with intention.
Yes.
Wilder, I'll pass it to you for your last words of wisdom to share.
Too many things coming to mind right now, but I just want to thank the Local Food Alliance for including me and for advocating for local food and spreading the good word. So shop, buy, eat local.
Awesome.
Thanks, Wilder. Appreciate that. And thank you all for taking time out of your day. I know it's a busy time of year for farmers, so really appreciate you being here today and sharing so much information with our audience. I know I learned a lot, so I imagine our audience is walking away with their heads filled with information and just excited to eat local food.
Totally. Grain is it's so exciting. It's so interesting. I think for so long people think it's dull and boring and it's just grain, but I think grain can be really interesting. So thank you very much, Amy and Local Food Alliance and Mike.
Yeah, thanks all. Appreciate it. And I think at this point we will stop recording.